A cleaning lady heard a baby crying desperately in a mansion. When she took him in her arms, something magical happened, and the millionaire businessman broke down in tears when he saw the scene. What he didn't know is that this woman carried a 15-year-old secret that would change everyone's lives forever. A story of second chances, forgiveness, and impossible love. Get ready, because this story will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like on this video, and comment where you're watching from. Sometimes the sound of a cry can awaken something we thought was buried forever. The mansion was too quiet for such a large place. She entered through the back door as she always did on Wednesdays, carrying her cleaning supplies in a worn plastic box. The smell of waxed furniture and freezing air conditioning greeted her, along with an unexpected sound that made her heart clench, the desperate cry of a child coming from the second floor. Her hands trembled as she dropped the box on the hallway floor. That sound. She knew that sound. It was the cry of a baby who had exhausted all his strength, who had cried so much his voice was beginning to break. Without thinking twice, she ran up the stairs, completely forgetting the protocols she had learned about not entering certain bedrooms without permission. The nursery was like something out of a luxury decorating magazine. Imported wallpaper with grey and yellow elephants, light wood furniture that probably cost more than she earned in 6 months, a crystal lamp that projected stars on the ceiling. But none of that mattered when she saw the little one in the crib, his face red from crying so much, his tiny fists clenched, his body tense with distress. "Oh, little one," she whispered, and without thinking about the consequences, she picked him up. The baby weighed less than she expected. He would be about 6 months old, she calculated, as she cradled him against her chest, beginning to rock him with movements that emerged from some deep place in her muscle memory. She started humming softly that song her grandmother sang to her when she was a child, that simple melody about a little dove flying toward the mountain. The effect was almost magical. The baby's sobs began to space out, his small body relaxed against her, his tiny fingers clung to the worn fabric of her work uniform. The smell of talcum powder mixed with spilled milk on his clothes brought memories she had tried to bury for 15 years, memories that now struck her chest with the force of a runaway train. "Shh, it's over, she murmured, walking in slow circles around the room, feeling the tears that threatened to spring from her own eyes. It was at that exact moment when she heard footsteps in the hallway, quick, decisive footsteps, expensive shoes against the marble floor. Her blood froze. She turned toward the door just as he appeared in the doorway. The businessman stopped short. He wore a wrinkled dark suit. His tie loosened, his hair disheveled in a way she had never seen before. His eyes, grey and usually cold as steel, scanned the scene. His cleaning employee holding his son, the baby finally calm after who knows how many hours of crying. She opened her mouth to apologize, to explain, to justify why she had crossed that invisible line between service staff and the family's private spaces. But the words stuck in her throat when she saw what was happening on his face. His eyes filled with tears. A man she had seen negotiate millions with a firm voice and impassive expression, who gave orders with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without questions, now had bright eyes and a trembling lower lip as he watched his son finally at peace. "I'm sorry, sir, I heard the crying and—" she began, taking a step back, preparing to return the baby and gather her things before being fired. "No." His voice came out hoarse, broken. "Don't apologize, please." He entered the room, and she could see how tired he was, the dark circles under his eyes, the way his shoulders seemed to carry an invisible weight, the deep wrinkle between his eyebrows that she didn't remember seeing before. "How long has he been crying?" she asked softly, still rocking the baby who was now starting to fall asleep against her shoulder. "I don't know." He ran a hand over his face, a gesture of complete defeat. "I arrived 20 minutes ago and he was already like this. I tried everything. The bottle, changing him, holding him, but he only cried louder. I don't know what to do." There was a long silence, filled only by the baby's now calm breathing. She could feel the tiny heart beating against her chest, the perfect weight of that small and vulnerable life in her arms. It was dangerous. Feeling this was dangerous because she knew exactly where it led. to the same abyss of pain she had been avoiding for 15 years. "How did you do it?" The businessman's question pulled her from her thoughts. "How did you manage to calm him when even his father couldn't?" She looked at the man before her, this giant of the technology industry, who at this moment seemed smaller than ever, and something in her chest softened. "Babies sense when we're nervous," she said quietly. "They need to feel safe. I just held him and sang what my grandmother sang to me." He approached slowly, as if afraid any sudden movement would break the fragile moment of peace. He looked at his sleeping son, touched with a trembling finger the little hand protruding from the blue pajamas. "My wife," he began, and stopped. He breathed deeply. "She left 3 months ago. Said she needed to find herself, that being a mother was suffocating her. I hired the best nanny money could buy. She had impressive credentials, references from important families. But this morning she quit. Said Miguel was a difficult baby, that he cried too much, that she couldn't work under these conditions." Miguel. So that was his name. She looked at the sleeping baby's face, the dark lashes against cheeks still wet with tears, the slightly parted mouth. "Miguel isn't difficult," she said with certainty. "He's just scared. Babies don't know why people disappear from their lives. They only know they need someone, and sometimes no one comes." The businessman's gaze fixed on her with an intensity that made her shiver. "Do you have children?" The question fell like a stone into a deep well. For a moment she considered lying, denying, deflecting. But there was something about this moment, about the shared vulnerability of this room full of soft light and whispered secrets, that demanded honesty. "I had, a long time ago, but I couldn't. I wasn't in a position to raise her." He nodded slowly, as if understanding everything she wasn't saying. "I need to travel tomorrow," he said suddenly. "A contract in Sao Paulo that I can't cancel without losing millions. I'll be gone 4 days. I can't leave Miguel alone. I can't trust another stranger who sees him only as a difficult job." The silence stretched between them, as she understood where this was going. "Sir, I'm just the cleaning lady. I have no professional training in childcare, no certificates or references as a nanny. But you have this." He pointed to the sleeping baby in her arms. "You have what no diploma can teach. I saw how you calmed him in seconds when I had been trying for hours. I saw the way you hold him as if he mattered more than anything in the world." She felt the tears finally spill down her cheeks. "I don't know if I can," she whispered. "Taking care of him reminds me of things I've tried to forget." "I know." His voice was soft now, almost gentle. "I also try to forget that I failed as a husband, that my marriage fell apart because I chose work over my family. But Miguel is here, and he needs someone. He needs someone who looks at him the way you're looking at him now." They looked at each other over the sleeping baby's head, two people broken for completely different reasons, united by a creature who was barely beginning to live. "I'll pay you 5 times what you earn now," he continued, "for cleaning and for taking care of Miguel. You'll have a room here if you need to stay some nights. Everything you need for him I'll buy. Just, please, don't leave him alone with strangers who don't care." She looked at the baby in her arms. Miguel let out a small sigh in his sleep, snuggling closer to her warmth. And in that moment, she knew it was too late to protect her heart. She was already involved. She already felt that ancient and familiar pull of maternal love that she had tried to bury for 15 years. "Okay," she said finally, "I'll take care of him." And when the businessman closed his eyes with relief, when a single tear rolled down his cheek, she wondered what exactly she had gotten herself into. But as she gently placed Miguel back in his crib, as she tucked him in with the soft cotton blanket and saw his peaceful little face in sleep, she knew there was no turning back. Some encounters change the course of a life in a matter of minutes. This was one of them. The wounds we carry in silence are often the ones that weigh the most. The bus rattled through the streets as she looked out the dirty window, watching the city wake up in the pink dawn. There were still 2 hours before Miguel would wake up. She had learned his schedule in just 3 days, but she always arrived early. She needed those moments of silence in the empty mansion to mentally prepare for what it meant to hold that baby in her arms. Her small apartment was 2 hours and 3 buses away. A room in the favela where she had grown up, where she still lived because it was what she could afford. 4 bare brick walls, a bathroom shared with 3 other families, a closet-sized kitchen. But it was hers, paid for with the sweat of 18 years cleaning houses. Since she was 19. She was 19 when everything changed, when she discovered she was pregnant by a man who disappeared as soon as he heard the news. 19 when her parents, devout Catholics but also brutally practical, told her that raising a child without means was condemning them both to a life of misery. "It's an act of love," and her mother had said, with dry eyes because she had already cried all her tears in private. "Giving her a family that can give her what you can't." And she, scared, alone, living in a shack where there was no running water or reliable electricity, signed the papers. She held her baby for only 3 hours after birth. A girl with dark eyes and clenched fists who seemed to look directly into her soul. "I'm sorry," she had whispered as the nurses took her away. "I'm so sorry, my love. But I'm giving you a chance at a better life, someday. Someday I hope you'll understand." 15 years later, she still hadn't forgiven herself. The bus stopped at her stop, and she got off, walking the 3 blocks to the mansion. The sun was beginning to shine on the white walls, the perfectly manicured gardens, the fountain in front that never stopped flowing. A completely different world from hers. She used her key to enter through the service door. The house smelled of cleanliness and silence. She went upstairs carefully, holding the bag with the fresh products she had bought at the market on the way. Organic fruits for Miguel's purees, vegetables without pesticides, all the best that the businessman's money could buy, but that she made sure to select with the critical eye of someone who knew exactly what quality products looked like. She gently pushed open the door to Miguel's room. He was still sleeping, curled on his side with his thumb near his mouth. His breathing was calm, regular. She allowed herself just a moment to look at him, to feel that dangerous love expand in her chest like a poisonous flower. Because it was dangerous, loving this baby who wasn't hers, allowing herself to feel what she had avoided feeling for 15 years. But she couldn't help it. Every time she bathed him, every time she fed him, every time she consoled him when he cried in the middle of the night, she felt as if she were healing something in herself while caring for him. "Good morning." She startled and turned to find the businessman at the door, already dressed in a suit, even though it was barely 6 in the morning. He wasn't traveling until noon, but apparently he couldn't sleep either. "Good morning, sir." She moved away from the crib, suddenly aware that she probably looked too maternal, too attached. "I brought fresh fruits from the market. I'll make banana and apple puree for Miguel this morning." Graciela. He used her name for the first time, and something in his tone made her look at him. "You can just call him Miguel. You don't need to maintain so much formality. Not with him." She nodded, not trusting her voice. "I wanted to talk to you before I leave," he continued. About what you said the other day, about having had a child." Her body immediately tensed. "Sir, that was a long time ago. It has nothing to do with my ability to care for Miguel." "I know." He entered the room, staying close to the door as if he also felt that this space was sacred somehow. "I'm not questioning that. In fact, I think it's precisely because of that you understand so well what he needs. I just wanted you to know that you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. Your past is yours." Graciela looked at him, this man who had built an empire but clearly didn't know how to build a family. There was an unexpected kindness in him, hidden under layers of professional success and personal failure. "It was a girl," she said suddenly, surprising herself. "I gave her up for adoption when I was 19. I had nothing, no money, no family to support me, not even a decent place to live. I thought I was giving her a chance at something better. And now 15 years have passed and I still wake up in the middle of the night wondering if I did the right thing. If she's okay, if she hates me, if someday." Her voice broke and she couldn't continue. Miguel moved in his crib, making a small baby noise, and they both stayed quiet until he calmed down again. "My wife hates being a mother," he said softly. She admitted it before she left. Said that every time she looked at Miguel, she felt like she was in a prison. "I was so busy building the company that I didn't realize how unhappy she was until it was too late." Do you think she'll come back? I don't know. Part of me hopes not. He looked at his sleeping son. He deserves someone who loves him for who he is, not someone who sees him as an obligation. Graciela understood then why he had hired her. Not just out of desperation, but because he had seen in her what was missing in his own life. Unconditional love. The ability to put a child's needs above one's own without resentment. I'll be gone 4 days, he said. If you need anything, the household staff has instructions to help you. My sister Beatrice will probably come to supervise. Just don't pay attention if she's condescending. She means well, but can be difficult. I'll be fine, Miguel will be fine. He nodded, but didn't move immediately. Instead, he approached the crib and gently touched his son's little head with a finger, a gesture so tender that Graciela had to look away. Thank you, he said finally, for taking care of him, for giving him what I don't know how to give yet. After he left, Graciela stayed alone in the room with the sleeping baby, feeling the weight of the trust that had been placed in her. It wasn't just a job, it was a second chance to do what she couldn't do 15 years ago, and this time she promised silently, as the sun filled the room with golden light, this time she wouldn't fail. The first weeks unfolded with a precision that surprised everyone, including Graciela herself. There was something about caring for Miguel that awakened skills in her she didn't even know she possessed. It wasn't just maternal instinct, although that certainly played a role, but an iron determination to do it right, to be exactly what this baby needed. She woke up every day at 4:30 in the morning. In her small apartment, she showered with the cold water that was all the old pipes could offer at that hour, put on the clean uniform she washed by hand every night, and left while the sky was still dark. The first bus passed at 5:10, and she was always at the stop 5 minutes early. During the 2-hour journey, she took out her phone, an old device with a cracked screen, and watched videos about child development. She had found a pediatrician's channel that offered free advice, and Graciela devoured every bit of information. How to interpret different types of crying, what developmental milestones a 6-month-old baby should be reaching, how to stimulate his growing brain with simple activities. She arrived at the mansion at 6:45, just as the first rays of sun began to touch the windows. Miguel woke up like clockwork at 7, and she was always there, ready with a smile and soft words to start his day. "Good morning, my darling," she would say as she lifted him from the crib, inhaling that unique smell of a freshly awakened baby. "Did you sleep well?" She changed him, bathed him in the small tub with warm water, neither too hot nor too cold, always testing with her elbow as her grandmother had taught her, and dressed him in the expensive little clothes that filled his closet. All imported brands, all of the best quality, but she noticed that Miguel seemed happier with the simple cotton garments than with the elaborate outfits his mother had bought. Breakfast was at 8. Graciela prepared purees from scratch, mashed organic fruits, oatmeal cooked to the perfect consistency, sometimes a bit of plain yogurt without sugar, none of the processed products that came in little jars that the previous nanny had used. Miguel ate enthusiastically, sometimes more ending up on his face than in his mouth, but always happy. After breakfast, 20 minutes of tummy time on a colorful blanket on the living room floor. Graciela had read that this strengthened the neck and back muscles, preparing the baby to eventually crawl. While Miguel lifted his little head with concentrated effort, she encouraged him with sweet words and bright toys placed strategically out of his reach. At 10, the first nap of the day, Miguel slept deeply for an hour and a half, and Graciela used that time to clean the house. She worked with silent efficiency, polishing furniture, vacuuming carpets, cleaning windows until they shined. The mansion had been impeccable before, but now it had a special glow, as if the love she put into caring for Miguel extended to every corner she touched. When Miguel woke up, it was time to play. Graciela didn't have expensive toys or sophisticated electronic devices, but she had something better: creativity. She filled plastic containers with dry beans so Miguel could hear the sound when shaking them. She made towers with cardboard boxes that he knocked down with delicious laughter. She sang children's songs she remembered from her own childhood, accompanying them with exaggerated gestures that made him laugh until he had hiccups. The businessman, who had returned from his 4-day trip, often found her like this when he came home early. He would stand in the living room doorway, watching silently, while Graciela made silly faces and Miguel writhed with laughter. Something in his expression was hard to decipher. Nostalgia? Envy? Gratitude? But he never interrupted those moments. At noon, lunch, homemade vegetable purees, carrot, pumpkin, broccoli, sweet potato, Graciela had discovered that Miguel loved sweet combinations, so she mixed sweet potato with a touch of cinnamon or pumpkin with apple. Each meal was an adventure, a delicate balance between nutrition and flavor that she perfected day after day. After lunch, another walk. The businessman had bought a luxury stroller, but Graciela preferred to carry Miguel in a simple baby carrier she had bought with her first increased salary. It kept him close to her heart as they walked through the mansion's gardens, naming everything they saw. "Look, Miguel, a yellow butterfly. Do you see it? It's flying toward the flowers. The afternoon nap was at 2. Miguel slept 2 hours. And Graciela took advantage to prepare the baby's dinner and study more on her phone. She had found a free online course on first aid for babies and watched it in fragments during these breaks, taking notes in a worn notebook. At 4, light snack and more playtime. This was Miguel's most active period, when he squealed with joy and tried to grab everything within reach. Graciela sat on the floor with him, stretching her own tired legs after hours of standing, and let Miguel explore the world from the safety of her lap. The evening bath was at 6, a relaxing ritual that prepared Miguel for sleep. Graciela filled the small tub with warm water, added a few drops of lavender oil she had bought at the market, and bathed the baby with gentle and patient movements. Miguel splashed and laughed, splashing water everywhere, and she couldn't help but laugh too. Dinner at 7, a more substantial puree, perhaps with a bit of shredded chicken or well-cooked lentils. Afterward, 10 minutes of rocking in the room's chair while she read him stories. The businessman had bought dozens of expensive children's books with beautiful illustrations, but Miguel seemed more fascinated by Graciela's voice than by the images. At 8 o'clock sharp, Miguel fell asleep. Graciela laid him in his crib, tucked him in with the soft blanket, and stood for a few more minutes, just watching him sleep. These were the most dangerous moments, when the love she felt for this child who wasn't hers threatened to overflow her completely. Afterward, she cleaned the kitchen, prepared things for the next day, and at 9 took the first bus back home. She arrived at her apartment around 11, exhausted to the bone, but there was something about that tiredness that felt meaningful, as if every aching muscle was proof that she was doing something that mattered. A month after starting, Graciela began to notice changes in Miguel that filled her heart with pride. The baby she had met, the one who cried desperately for hours, now smiled more than he cried. His eyes lit up every morning when he saw her enter his room. He had learned to recognize her voice, turning his little head every time she spoke, even from another room. "He's different," the businessman said one evening, watching his son play on the living room carpet. It was Friday, one of the few days he arrived home at a reasonable hour. More. Happy. Graciela, who was folding Miguel's clean clothes on the nearby sofa, nodded. Babies flourish with routine and constant affection. Miguel knows now that when he cries, someone will come. He knows he'll be fed, clean, safe. That certainty makes him feel protected. The businessman sat on the floor next to his son, something Graciela noticed he did more and more frequently. Miguel looked at him with interest, crawling clumsily toward him with that adorable determination of babies who are just learning to move. "Teach me," he said suddenly. "Teach me to be what he needs." Graciela looked at him surprised. This man who commanded boardrooms and negotiated with the most powerful now humbly asked her to teach him how to be a father to his own son. "You just need to be present," she said gently. "When you're here, really be here. Put away the phone. Forget about work for a moment. Look at Miguel, play with him, let him get to know you." The businessman nodded slowly. He took one of the wooden blocks scattered across the carpet and offered it to Miguel. The baby grabbed it with both little hands, examined it with serious concentration, and then, to the delight of both adults, gave it back to his father. "He wants to play," Graciela explained. "It's his way of connecting with you." For the next hour, The businessman played with his son in a way Graciela had never witnessed. Unhurried, undistracted, just a father and his baby building towers of blocks that Miguel knocked down with crystalline laughter. Graciela excused herself to give them privacy, though she stayed nearby cleaning the windows of the adjacent dining room from where she could discreetly observe. There was something beautiful about seeing this powerful man become completely silly to make his son laugh, making funny voices and exaggerated faces without any trace of the corporate dignity that usually characterized him. When Miguel began rubbing his eyes, the unmistakable sign that sleep was approaching, the businessman lifted him with a confidence he hadn't had a month ago. "Can I?" he asked, looking at Graciela. "He's your son, sir. You don't need permission to put him to bed." But he shook his head. "Show me how you do it. When I try, he cries. With you, he falls asleep in minutes." Graciela guided him through the nighttime ritual, step by step. The warm bath, the gentle massage with lotion on Miguel's little legs and arms, the clean pajamas, the last bottle of milk. She showed him how to hold the baby against his shoulder, how to rock in a slow and constant rhythm, how to hum softly. "Don't think about everything you have to do tomorrow," she told him as he tried to imitate her movements. "Just think about this moment, about Miguel's weight in your arms, about how he trusts you enough to let go into sleep." The businessman closed his eyes, breathed deeply, and surrendered to the moment. Graciela could see the tension leave his shoulders as he rocked gently, humming a melody without lyrics. Miguel yawned, snuggling closer to his father's chest, his little lashes fluttering. 10 minutes later, the baby was sleeping deeply. The businessman placed him in the crib with careful movements, as if placing something infinitely precious. He stood watching him for a long moment, and when he finally turned to Graciela, his eyes were moist. "Thank you," he whispered, "for teaching me how to be his father." Graciela smiled, feeling her own heart expand. "You were always his father, sir. You just needed to learn to listen to what Miguel needs instead of what you think he needs." That night, while waiting for the bus at the dark stop, Graciela reflected on the small victories of the day. Miguel laughing more, the businessman finally learning to connect with his son, the routine she had established working like a well-adjusted clock. But she also thought about her own open wounds. Every night when she put Miguel to bed, she couldn't help but think about her own daughter. Did someone put her to bed like this? Did they sing her songs? Did they rock her until she fell asleep, or had she grown up without knowing that kind of unconditional love? Tears slid silently down her cheeks as the bus arrived. She wiped them quickly before boarding, because crying in public was a luxury she couldn't afford. But in the privacy of her seat by the window, as the city passed blurred in the darkness, she let the ancient pain visit her once more. Someday, she promised herself, she would have the courage to look for her daughter. Someday she would be strong enough to face what she had done. But for now, she would care for Miguel with all the love she couldn't give her own child, and she hoped that, somehow, that counted for something. The businessman's sister appeared on a Tuesday afternoon, without prior notice, like an elegant tornado in designer heels. Graciela was in the garden with Miguel, sitting under the shade of a mango tree. She had spread out a blanket and scattered toys around, allowing the baby to explore the textures of fallen leaves under her close supervision. Miguel had a large leaf in each little hand, shaking them with serious concentration, when the sharp voice cut through the air. "And you are?" Graciela looked up to find a woman of about 45, in an impeccable white dress and sunglasses that probably cost more than she earned in 3 months. Her brown hair was styled in an elegant bun, and every detail of her appearance screamed money and social class. "I'm Graciela, ma'am." She quickly stood up, brushing dirt from her uniform skirt. "I take care of Miguel." The woman's eyes scanned her from top to bottom with a critical evaluation that Graciela knew well. It was the look she had received all her life, from clients in luxurious houses, from people at the supermarket when she paid with counted coins, from anyone who thought they could measure and dismiss her in an instant. "Beatriz Costa," she introduced herself, though she didn't offer her hand. "I'm Roberto's sister, this little one's aunt." She bent down toward Miguel, who looked at her with curiosity before returning his attention to the leaves. My brother mentioned he had hired someone new. He didn't mention it was the cleaning lady. The tone made clear exactly what she thought of that arrangement. I started as a cleaning lady, yes, said Graciela, keeping her voice calm. But now I also take care of Miguel. Your brother trusted me to care for his son. Trusted? Or was desperate and you were conveniently available? Graciela felt the sting of the words, but maintained her composure. It wasn't the first time someone questioned her worth based on her social position. Miguel is well cared for, she said simply. You can ask your brother. Oh, I intend to. Beatrice took out her phone, clearly sending a message. In fact, I'll be dining here tonight. I expect the house to be presentable and that there's appropriate food. I assume cooking is also among your, skills. It wasn't a question. It was a test. Of course, ma'am. The rest of the afternoon was a whirlwind of preparations. After putting Miguel down for his nap, Graciela cleaned the house from top to bottom, even though it was already impeccable. Then she ran to the nearby market, using her own money because she didn't have time to ask the businessman for authorization, and bought ingredients for a menu she had seen in a cooking video: caprese salad, steak with pepper sauce, garlic mashed potatoes, and for dessert, a chocolate mousse she knew how to make from memory. She cooked while Miguel played in his portable playpen in the kitchen, babbling happily to himself. Beatrice had disappeared somewhere in the house, probably inspecting every corner looking for flaws. The businessman arrived at 7, finding the formal dining table perfectly set with fine china, candles lit, and the aroma of food filling the air. His expression of surprise was almost comical. Beatrice, he said, and Graciela heard the resigned sigh in his voice. You should have let me know you were coming. I wanted to see how things are here, his sister replied, already seated at the head of the table, especially to meet this person in whom you've placed so much trust. Dinner was tense. Graciela served each course with steady hands, though she could feel Beatrice's eyes following every movement. The questions began innocently. How long have you been working for my brother, Graciela? 2 months cleaning the house, ma'am. 5 weeks caring for Miguel. And what training do you have in childcare? None formal, but I've cared for children all my life, my younger siblings, my neighbors' children. I see, nothing professional then. Beatrice cut a piece of steak, chewed slowly. The food is acceptable. The businessman intervened. Beatrice, Graciela is excellent with Miguel. I've never seen him so happy and healthy. I'm sure she's very good at what she does. Beatrice's smile didn't reach her eyes. But Roberto, do you really know this woman? Have you checked her background? Do you know anything about her personal life, her family, her past? Graciela felt her stomach contract. She knew where this was going. I know what I need to know, the businessman said firmly. Oh, really? Beatrice leaned forward. Do you know, for example, that she herself has a child? Or had, I should say. She gave her up for adoption years ago. The silence that followed was deafening. Graciela could feel the blood draining from her face. How? I did some inquiries, Beatrice continued in a sweet and poisonous voice. It's not difficult to find information when you know where to look. A girl given up 15 years ago, and now here you are, caring for someone else's child. Is that what you do? Replace the baby you abandoned? Beatrice, enough. The businessman's voice was like ice, but Graciela found her own voice, trembling but firm. I was 19 years old. No money, no support, living in conditions you can't even imagine. Adoption wasn't abandonment. It was the most loving thing I could do under those circumstances. How convenient, Beatrice replied. And now you have this good job, this nice house to work in, access to a family with money. Forgive my skepticism, but one has to be careful of people who see opportunities where others see responsibilities. Enough. The businessman stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Graciela, please let my sister and me speak in private. Graciela nodded, not trusting her voice. She retreated to the kitchen with trembling legs, hearing the beginning of a heated discussion in the dining room. Her hands shook as she washed the dishes, tears finally spilling now that she was alone. How had Beatrice discovered about her past? Had she hired an investigator? What else did she know? And most importantly, would this mean the end of her job here? But beneath the fear and humiliation there was something else, fury. Fury that her worst mistake, the decision that had haunted her for 15 years, was being used as a weapon against her, as if she hadn't spent every day since then regretting, wondering, crying in silence. She heard footsteps and tensed, but it was the businessman who entered the kitchen alone. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "My sister is worried. Sometimes she shows that concern in wrong ways." "Am I going to lose my job?" The words came out in a whisper. "No." His answer was immediate and firm. "Never. Graciela, your past doesn't define who you are now. I see how you care for Miguel. I see the love you give him. That's what matters." "But she's right," said Graciela, the words coming out in a torrent. "What do you really know about me? I'm just the cleaning lady who... You're the woman who saved my son from crying alone for hours. You're the person who teaches him new things every day, who makes him laugh, who keeps him safe." He approached, and there was an intensity in his eyes that made her hold her breath. "Your past. We all have one. We've all made decisions we regret. But that doesn't determine our future. And your sister. Beatrice will leave tonight, and if she returns it will be with respect or she won't be welcome." He paused. "But I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Graciela nodded, preparing herself. "Does caring for Miguel make it harder for you to deal with your own past? Does it hurt you?" The question took her by surprise. He didn't ask if she was using Miguel as a replacement or if she had hidden motives. He asked if she was hurting herself. "Yes," she admitted quietly. "Sometimes when I hold him, I think of her. I wonder if someone holds her like this. If someone loves her like I love Miguel, it's painful. Do you want to stop?" "No." The answer came out without hesitation. "Because it's also healing something in me. Every day I spend with Miguel, I feel like I don't know, maybe redeeming something, proving to myself that I can be what he needs, even if I couldn't be it for my own daughter." The businessman nodded slowly, understanding more than she was expressing with words. "Then we continue. You, me, and Miguel. And anyone who can't respect you has no place in this house." That night, while Graciela waited for her bus under the stars, she reflected on what had happened. Beatrice had tried to use her worst secret as a weapon, but had failed. The businessman had defended her, had seen beyond her past mistakes toward who she was now. For the first time in 15 years, Graciela allowed herself to consider that maybe, just maybe, she deserved this second chance. It was a rainy Saturday when Graciela's life became complicated in ways she never could have imagined. Miguel had just turned 7 months old, and Graciela was on the living room floor with him, helping him practice crawling. The baby had managed to move backward for weeks, something that adorably frustrated him, but was finally discovering how to propel himself forward. Each small 5-centimeter advance was celebrated with applause and laughter. "That's it, champ," Graciela encouraged him, as Miguel clumsily propelled himself toward a stuffed toy. "Almost, almost!" The businessman was sitting on the nearby sofa, working on his laptop, but stopping frequently to watch with a smile. Saturdays had become his favorite day, the only full day he spent at home, actively participating in Miguel's routine. It was the sound of a key in the front door that made them freeze. Only 3 people had a key to the house: the businessman, the gardener, and... The woman who entered was thin to the point of seeming fragile, with platinum blonde hair cut in a pixie style that Graciela recognized from fashion magazines. She wore wrinkled travel clothes and dragged a designer suitcase. Her eyes, green and surrounded by dark circles, scanned the room until they found Miguel. "My baby!" she exclaimed, dropping the suitcase and running toward them. Miguel, who was about to grab his toy, startled at the shrill sound. His face crumpled, and Graciela could feel the cry building. Instinctively, she picked him up just as the woman reached them. "Carolina." The businessman's voice was flat, carefully neutral. "I didn't know you were coming back." "Surprise." The woman, Carolina, Miguel's mother, stood before Graciela with outstretched arms. "Give me my son." But Miguel, who hadn't seen her in 4 months, almost half of his short life, didn't recognize her. When Carolina tried to take him, the baby clung tighter to Graciela and began to cry. "Shh, it's okay, little one," Graciela whispered, rocking gently. "It's okay." "Who is she?" Carolina stepped back, looking at her husband. "Why is my son crying when I try to hold him and clinging to the maid?" The businessman stood up, moving between them like a mediator in a tense negotiation. "Carolina, this is Graciela. She's been taking care of Miguel since you left. Miguel, honey, this is Mommy. Do you remember Mommy?" But Miguel only cried louder, hiding his face in Graciela's neck. Carolina's expression went through several emotions in rapid succession: shock, pain, and finally, something that looked dangerously close to rage. "4 months, she said in a trembling voice. "I was gone 4 months finding myself, trying to heal, and when I come back, my son doesn't recognize me." "Maybe you should have thought about that before you left," said the businessman, and there was an edge in his voice that Graciela had never heard. "Oh, don't you dare." Carolina turned to him. "Don't you dare judge me. You were never here, never. I was alone with him day and night while you built your empire. I was drowning, Roberto. I was dying." "Then you should have said so. We could have found help, therapy, anything. But instead, you just left." Graciela felt trapped in the middle of this painful exchange, still holding Miguel, who was finally calming down, his sobs diminishing to occasional hiccups. "Maybe I should take Miguel to his room," she suggested quietly. "No." Carolina raised a hand. "Don't take my son anywhere." She turned to Graciela, and there was a desperation in her eyes that was difficult to witness. Let me try again. Please." Graciela looked at the businessman, who nodded slightly. Carefully, she approached Carolina, positioning herself so Miguel could see his mother's face while still feeling safe in Graciela's arms. "Talk to him softly," Graciela instructed. "Let him see you, hear your voice. Don't try to take him yet." Carolina breathed deeply, and when she spoke, her voice was softer. "Hi, my love. It's Mommy. Mommy came back. I missed you so much." Miguel looked at her with curiosity, his tears drying. When Carolina slowly raised a hand and touched his cheek, he didn't pull away. It was small progress, but progress nonetheless. For the next 30 minutes, Graciela patiently guided Carolina through the process of reconnecting with her son. She showed her Miguel's favorite toys, how he liked to be held, what songs made him smile. It was strange and painful, teaching a mother how to approach her own child, but Graciela did it with all the grace she could muster. Finally, Miguel allowed Carolina to hold him, though he kept looking at Graciela as if to make sure she hadn't left. "Thank you," Carolina said quietly, tears rolling down her cheeks as she cradled her son. Thank you." The businessman watched with a complex expression. When Graciela discreetly pointed toward the kitchen, suggesting she give them privacy, he shook his head. He wanted her to stay. He needed her to stay. That night, after Miguel was asleep, the 3 adults sat in the living room. The atmosphere was tense, charged with everything unsaid. "How long are you planning to stay?" the businessman asked. Carolina shrugged, looking at her glass of wine without drinking. "I came back to stay, to try, to fix this. Our family." "And what about your personal journey?" "I found what I was looking for." She looked at her husband directly. "I realized I was running from responsibility, from the fear of not being enough. I saw a therapist in Paris. We talked a lot about postpartum depression, about how I didn't get help when I needed it." "I tried to get you help," said Roberto. "I suggested therapy dozens of times." "I know, and I always found excuses." She breathed shakily. "I was ashamed. Perfect Carolina Costa, who had never failed at anything in her life, couldn't handle being a mother. It was unbearable to admit it." There was a long silence. Graciela felt incredibly out of place, but every time she tried to get up and leave, the businessman gestured for her to stay. "If you're going to stay," he said finally, "we need to establish rules." Rules? Graciela continues caring for Miguel, at least until he readjusts to you, until we can be sure you're stable. Carolina's face hardened. He's my son. He's our son. And he spent 4 months crying for you. I'm not going to risk his well-being for pride or appearances. Carolina looked at Graciela, and there was something complex in that look. Not exactly hostility, but not acceptance either. And what about you? She asked directly. What do you get out of all this? The question took Graciela by surprise. I take care of Miguel. It's my job. Is it just a job? Carolina leaned forward. Because the way he clings to you, the way you look at him, it doesn't seem like just a job. Graciela felt her throat close. What could she say? That she loved Miguel as if he were hers, that every minute with him was both healing and pain, that she saw in him the opportunity to be the mother she couldn't be 15 years ago. And Miguel means a lot to me, she said finally, choosing her words carefully. I care for him as best I can, but I know I'm not his mother. You are his mother. Am I? Carolina's voice broke, because right now it doesn't feel like it. It feels like I've lost him, like these 4 months changed everything and now I'm a stranger in my own son's life. That can change, said Graciela gently. Babies are resilient. With time and patience, Miguel will remember his connection with you. And you? Will you step aside so that can happen? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Graciela looked at the businessman, but he was looking at his wife with an indecipherable expression. I'll do what's best for Miguel, Graciela said finally. Always. It was the only answer she could give, though her heart was breaking, imagining a future where she would have to step away, where she would see Miguel less and less, until eventually he didn't need her at all. Carolina nodded slowly, apparently satisfied with that answer, though her eyes remained cautious. Good. Then I suppose we'll have to find a way to make this work. But while the words sounded conciliatory, Graciela could feel the underlying tension. Carolina had returned, and with her return came a new and dangerous complexity. 2 women, both claiming a place in Miguel's life, both with unhealed wounds and unmet needs. Something would have to give. The following weeks were like walking through an emotional minefield. Carolina had established residence in the master bedroom again, though Graciela noticed that she and the businessman slept in separate beds. During the day, Carolina tried to reconnect with Miguel, with mixed results. The baby tolerated her, but clearly preferred Graciela, something that created palpable tension in every interaction. I want to feed him, Carolina announced one morning when Graciela was preparing Miguel's breakfast puree. Of course, ma'am. Graciela handed her the spoon and bowl, showing her how Miguel preferred to eat. Small amounts, spaced with airplane games and silly sounds. But Carolina was impatient, trying to feed him too quickly, and Miguel stubbornly closed his mouth. Come on, Miguel, open up. It's Mommy. Why won't you open your mouth for Mommy? The frustration in her voice made Miguel begin to whimper, turning his little head toward Graciela with a pleading look. Maybe he needs a break, Graciela suggested gently. He doesn't need a break. He needs to eat. Carolina tried to force another spoonful, and Miguel spit out the food, beginning to cry in earnest. Graciela stepped forward automatically, and Carolina shot her a sharp look. I can handle my own son. Of course, I just thought... Stop thinking. Stop always being... here. Carolina dropped the spoon with a clatter. Every time I turn around, you're there. Hovering, judging, like you're waiting for me to fail. I'm not. But Carolina had already left, leaving Miguel crying in his high chair. Graciela immediately took him out, consoling him with soft words while cleaning the food from his face. The businessman had witnessed everything from the kitchen doorway. She's struggling, he said quietly, trying to find her place here. I know, and I'm trying to give her space, but Miguel needs both of you. He sighed. Somehow, we have to make this work. But making it work was easier said than done. Carolina oscillated between desperately trying to connect with Miguel and withdrawing when those interactions didn't go as expected. Graciela tried to step back, to give them space. But every time she did, Miguel became more irritable and Carolina more frustrated. One night, Graciela heard a heated argument between the couple. "She's turning him against me," Carolina's voice high with pain. "She's doing it on purpose." "That's ridiculous. Graciela is trying to help." "Help? She's trying to replace me, don't you see? She's the one who sings the lullabies, the one who knows all his favorite toys, the one who—" "Because she was here when you weren't. She was here day after day caring for him. You can't expect to come back after 4 months and have everything be like before." There was a long silence, then the sound of muffled sobs. Graciela retreated to the small room the businessman had given her on the 3rd floor. She stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the situation pressing on her. Maybe Carolina was right. Maybe her presence here was doing more harm than good. Maybe she should leave, let the family try to heal without the complication of a stranger in the middle. But then she thought of Miguel, of his smile when he saw her every morning, of the way he snuggled against her when he was tired. How could she leave when he still needed her? The dilemma kept her awake most of the night. In mid-June, the June festivities began to approach. It was a time of year she had always loved. The colorful flags, the traditional music, the corn and coconut sweets. In the favela where she grew up, the celebrations lasted weeks, with bonfires every night and neighbors sharing food they could barely afford but offered with generous hearts. Graciela decided to incorporate some of that tradition into Miguel's life. She made miniature flags from colored paper and hung them in his room. She prepared pachoca de amendoim, the peanut sweet her grandmother taught her to make, adapted so Miguel could eat it safely. She sang him the traditional songs she had learned as a child. The businessman found all this charming. One afternoon he came home and found Graciela with Miguel in the garden, teaching him to clap to the rhythm of folk music playing from her old phone. "What's all this?" he asked, smiling. "St. John festivities," Graciela explained. "It's a tradition in Brazil to celebrate in June. I thought Miguel should know these customs. I never participated much in these celebrations." The businessman sat on the grass next to them. "I grew up in boarding schools abroad. When I came back to Brazil in summer, my family thought these celebrations were, how did they put it, too common." Graciela heard the tone in his voice. Not exactly sadness, but something like nostalgia for experiences he never had. "It's never too late to learn," she said with a smile. "Have you ever danced forró?" "I have no idea what that is." "It's a traditional dance, very simple, very fun." She stood up, holding Miguel in one arm. "Come on, I'll teach you." What followed was half an hour of laughter as Graciela tried to teach him the basic forró steps, with Miguel laughing out loud every time his father stumbled. It was a moment of pure lightness, of uncomplicated joy. Until Carolina appeared at the garden door. Her expression was hard to read as she observed the scene. Her husband, the nanny and her son laughing together, sharing something that clearly excluded her. Something in her posture hardened. "What's going on here?" The music stopped. The laughter died. "Graciela was teaching me about the June festivities," the businessman explained, with no trace of guilt in his voice. "It's fascinating. You should join us." "No, thank you." Carolina crossed her arms. "I had a different idea. I thought we could organize a small party here, an appropriate St. John celebration with guests from our social circle. We could hire catering, professional musicians, decorators." "That's not what the June festivities are about," said Graciela before she could stop herself. "They're about community, tradition, sharing what you have with your neighbors." "Excuse me, but I'm not looking to recreate a favela celebration in my garden." The air turned icy. The businessman stepped forward. "Carolina, that was unnecessary." "Was it?" Carolina turned to him. "She's here to take care of our son, not to dictate how we celebrate our parties." "I'm not dictating anything," said Graciela, her voice carefully controlled though she felt the sting of the words. "I just thought Miguel might enjoy learning about his own Brazilian roots." "His roots are very different from yours, Graciela." Carolina pronounced her name as if it were something unpleasant in her mouth. "And I think it's time we all remembered exactly what your place is here." "Enough." The businessman raised his voice, something Graciela had rarely witnessed. "Graciela is part of this house, part of Miguel's life. If you can't treat her with respect, then—" Then what, Roberto? Carolina took a step toward him. Will you ask me to leave again? Is that what you want? To completely replace me with the perfect maid who sings the right songs and cooks the right meals and never makes mistakes? Her voice broke on the last words, and Graciela could see the tears threatening to spill. Suddenly, she understood. Carolina wasn't being cruel for cruelty's sake. She was terrified. Terrified that she had lost her son. Terrified that there was no place for her in this new dynamic. Terrified of being the only one who didn't fit. Maybe we should do both, Graciela suggested softly. Your elegant party and something more traditional, so Miguel can experience both sides of the culture. Carolina looked at her with surprise. Why would you do that? Why would you be kind to me when I'm clearly not being kind to you? Graciela shifted Miguel to her other hip, choosing her words carefully. Because this isn't about us, it's about him. She looked at the baby, who was watching them both with big, curious eyes. Miguel deserves to have his mother. He deserves to see his mother happy, confident, loving him, and if I can help with that in any way, I will. It was the truth, though saying it hurt, because it meant putting herself aside, making herself smaller, giving Carolina space even when every fiber of her being wanted to hold Miguel closer. Carolina blinked, apparently speechless. The businessman looked at Graciela with an expression she couldn't completely decipher, gratitude mixed with something deeper, something dangerous. We'll organize both, he said finally. An appropriate celebration for our business friends, and something more intimate, more traditional, for us and the household staff. Graciela, could you take care of the traditional part? Of course, sir. During the following days there was a tense truce. Carolina planned her formal event with almost manic obsession, hiring the best catering, ordering elaborate decorations, sending invitations to important people. Graciela, for her part, worked on her own more humble celebration. Handmade, colorful flags, a safe bonfire in the garden, traditional sweets she prepared at night after Miguel fell asleep. Beatriz, the businessman's sister, appeared a few days before the event. To Graciela's surprise, her attitude had changed significantly since their last encounter. My brother says you're organizing a traditional June celebration, she said, finding Graciela in the kitchen making canjica. I'd like to help if you'll let me. Graciela looked at her with surprise. You want to help? I've been thinking a lot since our initial conversation. Beatriz looked uncomfortable. I wasn't fair to you. I judged based on assumptions instead of facts. My brother has told me how much you've done for Miguel, how you care for him, and I've seen the difference in him, so... She extended a hand. Can we start over? Graciela looked at the extended hand, then at Beatriz's face, searching for signs of falseness, but what she saw was genuine sincerity. Slowly, she took her hand. It would be an honor to have your help, Mum. Beatriz. Just Beatriz. They worked together for the next few hours, and Graciela discovered that Beatriz had her own talents. She was excellent with visual details, transforming Graciela's simple paper flags into truly beautiful decorations. She also had stories about Roberto as a child, about how he always felt out of place in the rigid family structure, how he had built his empire partly to prove something he never needed to prove. He never had the chance to just be... Roberto, said Beatriz as they hung the flags. He was always the heir, the businessman, the success. Seeing how he is with Miguel now, how he allows himself to be silly and play, it's the first time I've seen my real brother in years. Graciela listened, understanding more about the man she worked for. A man trapped between expectations and desires, between the world he built and the world he secretly longed for. The night of the formal celebration was exactly what Carolina had planned. Elegant, sophisticated, perfectly executed. Guests filled the gardens lit with designer lamps. There was champagne and canapes. A band played soft bossa nova. Miguel, dressed in a small suit that probably cost more than Graciela earned in a month, was briefly presented before being taken inside. Graciela watched from Miguel's room window, feeling completely out of place in this world of wealth and status. But the next day would be her turn. The traditional celebration was smaller but infinitely warmer. Only the household staff, the gardener, the cook, the driver who came occasionally, along with some of the immediate neighbors that Graciela had met during her walks with Miguel. Beatriz had been invited too, and to everyone's surprise, Carolina decided to stay, though she kept to the edges. There was a small but safe bonfire, surrounded by chairs borrowed from various houses. Graciela had cooked for days, pachoca, cocada, boiled corn, cornmeal cake. It wasn't expensive restaurant food, but it was made with love, with hands that knew each recipe from memory. The businessman appeared with Miguel in his arms, dressed casually, jeans and a simple shirt, in a way Graciela had never seen him. "Where did you learn all this?" he asked, looking around at the simple but joyful celebration. "From my grandmother. From my community. From people who didn't have much but shared everything." She took Miguel from his arms. "These are the memories I want Miguel to have. Not just champagne and expensive suits, but bonfires and simple music and the love of people who care for him." The businessman looked at her for a long moment, something indefinable passing between them. "You're extraordinary," he said quietly. "Do you know that?" Before Graciela could respond, the music began, Foro playing from someone's old phone, and the gardener took the cook's hand to dance. Beatriz laughed and joined in, surprisingly graceful despite her usual elegance. Carolina watched from the house doorway, arms crossed. Graciela saw her and made a brave decision. She approached with Miguel. "Would you like to dance with him?" she offered. "Babies love movement. It calms him." Carolina looked at her son, then at Graciela, and something in her expression softened. "I don't know how to dance. This. You don't have to know. Just move with the music. Miguel doesn't judge." She passed the baby to her. "Just enjoy this with him, this moment, now." Carolina took Miguel awkwardly, but after a moment she began to sway gently with the music. Miguel, instead of crying as he would have done weeks ago, rested his little head against her shoulder. Something in Carolina's face broke and reformed, and for the first time, Graciela saw her really look at her son, not with frustration or desperation, but with something close to simple, pure love. The businessman stood next to Graciela, watching his wife and son. "Thank you," he murmured, "for all this. For giving her the chance to find her way back to him." Graciela nodded, not trusting her voice, because as she watched Carolina finally connect with Miguel, as she saw the small family trying to rebuild itself, she felt something tear in her own chest. She had done the right thing, but doing the right thing hurt more than she had ever imagined. Sometimes, in moments of crisis, we discover who we truly trust. It was a Saturday night when Miguel started feeling unwell. Graciela noticed it first during his bath. His skin was warmer than normal, his cheeks too pink. "Mr. Roberto," she called, maintaining calm, though her heart was beginning to race. "I think Miguel has a fever." The businessman and Carolina rushed to the bathroom. Carolina immediately took the baby, barely wrapped in a towel. "He's burning up!" Her voice rose in pitch. "We need to take him to the hospital, now." "Wait," said Graciela, taking the thermometer from the medicine cabinet. "Let's first see how high it is." But Carolina was already panicking, pacing back and forth with Miguel in her arms, which made the baby, sensing his mother's anxiety, begin to cry. "There's no time for that. What if it's something serious? What if it's meningitis or—" "Carolina, calm down," Roberto intervened. "Let me see." But she pulled away, clutching Miguel tighter. "Don't tell me to calm down. He's my son. My son is sick, and he needs a doctor." Graciela approached with slow, deliberate movements. "Mrs. Carolina, I understand you're scared, but Miguel needs us to be calm. Let me hold him just for a moment to take his temperature. Then we'll decide what to do." There was a moment of tension, where Carolina seemed about to refuse, but finally, with trembling hands, she handed the crying baby to Graciela. With efficient movements, Graciela gently dried Miguel, dressed him in light pajamas and placed the thermometer. While they waited for the result, she rocked him gently, humming softly until his sobs decreased. 38.5 degrees, she read. "It's elevated, but not dangerously high." "See?" said Roberto. "It's not an emergency." Any fever in a baby is an emergency, Carolina insisted. I'm calling Dr. Mendes. He has a private clinic that... Or we could try to bring it down here first, Graciela suggested. I've cared for many babies with fevers, lukewarm baths, keeping him hydrated, monitoring every hour. If it goes higher or doesn't come down in the next few hours, then we take him. Carolina looked at her with disbelief. Are you suggesting we risk my son's health with home remedies when we could have professional medical attention? I'm not suggesting we risk him, Graciela responded patiently. I'm saying not every fever requires hospitalization. Babies develop fevers frequently. It's part of how their immune system learns to fight infections. She's right, said Roberto, watching his son, who was now calmer, in Graciela's arms. Let's try it her way first, but if it gets worse even a little bit, we take him immediately, Graciela promised. The next few hours were intense. Graciela prepared a lukewarm bath, not cold because that could cause chills, and bathed Miguel gently, letting the water carry away some of the excess heat. She gave him small amounts of water frequently. Every hour she took his temperature meticulously. Carolina didn't leave for a moment, watching every move Graciela made with hawk eyes. Roberto came and went, bringing whatever Graciela asked for: clean towels, fresh water, a small fan to circulate the air. At 2 in the morning, Miguel's temperature had dropped to 37.5 degrees. He was asleep in Graciela's arms, breathing peacefully. You did it, Carolina said quietly, almost in disbelief. You really brought down the fever. Babies' bodies are resilient when given the right support, Graciela responded softly. But we should keep monitoring him through the night. I'll stay with him, Carolina offered, extending her arms. Graciela handed Miguel over carefully, but the moment he changed arms, the baby woke up and began to fuss, instinctively seeking the familiar comfort of Graciela. She saw the pain cross Carolina's face, and something in her chest twisted. How about we both stay? Graciela suggested. You can hold him, and I'll be here to take his temperature every hour. Carolina nodded, grateful. They sat in Miguel's rocking chair, Carolina holding the baby while Graciela pulled up a chair nearby. Roberto brought coffee for both and stayed too, leaning against the wall, watching. It was during that long night, in the silence interrupted only by Miguel's soft breathing, that something changed between the two women. How did you know what to do? Carolina asked at some point near dawn. How did you know exactly what to do when I was paralyzed with panic? Graciela considered the question. I've cared for many sick children. My younger brother had high fevers frequently when he was a baby. My mother worked 2 jobs, so I was the one who stayed with him. I learned to read the signs, to know when to truly worry and when they just needed time and care. I never had to do anything like that, Carolina admitted. I grew up with nannies, private doctors available 24 hours. If I had a headache, there were 3 specialists called before I finished complaining. I don't know how to. Be practical. How to trust my own judgment with him. You can learn, said Graciela gently. It's not too late. Carolina looked at her for a long moment. Why are you so kind to me? After how I've treated you, after everything. Why? Graciela looked at the sleeping baby in Carolina's arms. Because Miguel needs us to get along. He needs to see that the women in his life can work together, support each other. And because I understand what it's like to feel inadequate as a mother. It was the most honest confession she had shared, and she saw the surprise in Carolina's eyes. Your daughter, the one you gave up for adoption. Graciela nodded. Every day I wondered if I was doing the right thing. If someone else could give her a better life than me, the fact that I ultimately decided yes doesn't make the decision easy or stop it from hurting. But you, with Miguel, you're so natural, as if you instinctively know what to do. I don't always know, I just try. And when I make mistakes, I learn and try again. Graciela leaned forward. You can do the same. Miguel doesn't need perfection. He just needs you to be present, to try to love him even when it's hard. Tears silently rolled down Carolina's cheeks. I'm so afraid of failing him, of not being enough, of him growing up and hating me for not being the mother he deserved. Then be here now, said Graciela simply. "Every moment you spend with him, every time you hold him even when he cries, every time you choose to stay when you want to run. That's what counts." Roberto watched this exchange from his place against the wall with an expression of wonder and gratitude. When the sun finally rose, painting Miguel's room with golden light, the fever had completely disappeared. The baby woke up, looked at his mother holding him, and for the first time in weeks, didn't immediately seek Graciela. He simply snuggled closer to Carolina, content. Carolina began to cry again, but this time with joy. That day marked a turning point. Carolina began to trust Graciela more, to ask for advice instead of feeling threatened. Graciela, in turn, found ways to teach without making Carolina feel incompetent. And Miguel, sensing the emerging harmony between the two most important women in his life, began to flourish in new ways. 2 weeks after the fever incident, Graciela arrived at her apartment late at night and found a manila envelope slipped under her door. It had no return address, only her name written by hand in neat lettering. With trembling hands she opened it. Inside was a single letter, written on simple white paper. "Dear Mrs. Graciela Silva, my name is Isabella. I'm 15 years old. I believe you are my biological mother." The world stopped. Graciela had to sit on her bed because her legs stopped supporting her. She read the words over and over, as if repetition could make them less real or more real or something her brain could process. "I've been searching for information about my origins for the past year. An organization that helps reunite biological families assisted me. They found your records, my birth records. I want you to know that I had good adoptive parents. They loved me, cared for me, gave me a wonderful life. This isn't about replacing them. I just need to understand, know where I come from, why. If you're willing to meet me, I've included my phone number. No pressure, no expectations, just a conversation. Sincerely, Isabella." Graciela cried until she had no tears left. 15 years. 15 years of questions, of guilt, of sleepless nights imagining what her daughter would be like. And now suddenly she had a name, Isabella. She didn't sleep that night. When her alarm went off at 4:30, she was already dressed, sitting on her bed, looking at the letter she had read hundreds of times. She arrived at the mansion in a state of trance. She prepared Miguel's breakfast automatically, her hands performing familiar tasks while her mind was miles away. Miguel noticed something was different. He was perceptive that way, and clung to her more than usual, as if knowing she needed comfort as much as he did. Roberto found Graciela in the garden at noon, sitting on a bench while Miguel played on his blanket nearby. She looked so lost that he immediately worried. "Graciela, what's wrong?" She looked at him, and he saw fresh tears in her eyes. "My daughter. She found me." The story came out in halting fragments. The letter, the organization, Isabella, who was 15 and wanted to meet her. Roberto listened without interrupting, and when Graciela finished, he sat beside her on the bench. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." Her voice broke. "What do I tell her? How do I explain that I gave her up? How do I—" "You tell her the truth," he said softly, "that you were young, that you had no resources, that you thought you were giving her a chance at something better, and that you never stopped thinking about her, not a single day. What if she hates me? What if she doesn't?" He paused. "Graciela, you've spent 15 years punishing yourself for a decision you made when you were desperate. Maybe it's time to let Isabella decide for herself how she feels about it." Carolina appeared at the garden door, saw the scene. Graciela crying, Roberto consoling her, and something crossed her face. But instead of withdrawing with resentment as she would have done weeks ago, she approached. "What happened?" Roberto looked at Graciela, asking permission. She nodded weakly. "Graciela's daughter, the one she gave up for adoption, found her. She wants to meet." Carolina sat on Graciela's other side. "That's incredible. Terrifying, probably, but incredible." "I don't know if I can do it," Graciela admitted. "You can," Carolina said with certainty. "If you can handle my panic attacks, deal with a meddling sister-in-law, teach me how to be a mother when I was ready to run. You can do this." She took Graciella's hand. "And you don't have to do it alone. If you need support, time off, someone to practice what to say with, I'm here." It was the first time Carolina had offered genuine support, and Graciella felt something break in her chest, the last walls of defense she had built between them. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, with trembling hands, Graciella dialed the number Isabella had left. A young, nervous voice answered on the third ring. "Hello? Isabella, it's Graciella. You're—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "My biological mother." The voice on the other end was soft. "Thank you for calling. I wasn't sure you would." They talked for 2 hours. Isabella told her about her life, her adoptive parents who were teachers, her younger brother also adopted, her love for classic literature and art. Graciella shared about her own life with the painful honesty the situation demanded. "Why?" Isabella finally asked. "Why did you give me up for adoption?" Graciella closed her eyes, remembering. "I was 19 years old. I lived in a room without running water. I had no stable job, no family to support me. Your biological father disappeared when he found out about the pregnancy." She breathed shakily. "I thought giving you to people who could provide everything I couldn't was the most loving act I could do. But it was also the hardest, and I never stopped wondering if I made the right decision. Did you think about me? Every day, every birthday, every Christmas, every time I saw a girl your age. I wondered what you'd be like, if you'd be happy, if you'd hate me." "I don't hate you," Isabella said, and Graciella heard tears in her voice. "I was angry for a while when I was younger, but my parents helped me understand that sometimes love means letting go. They agreed to meet the following Saturday at a neutral cafe downtown. When Graciella hung up, she immediately called Roberto. "She said she doesn't hate me," she sobbed into the phone. "Mr. Roberto, she said she doesn't hate me." "Of course not," he responded, with warmth in his voice. "How could anyone who knows you hate you?" Saturday arrived both too quickly and not quickly enough. Roberto insisted on giving her the day off and lending her his driver. Carolina spent the morning helping her choose what to wear, finally deciding on a simple but elegant dress that Carolina gave her. "Barely worn," she said, "and the perfect color for Graciella's skin tone." "You'll be beautiful," Carolina assured, adjusting the necklace. "And more importantly, you'll be you. That's what Isabella needs to see." Graciella arrived at the cafe 40 minutes early. She ordered a coffee she couldn't drink, sitting at a table near the window. Every time the door opened, her heart jumped. And then, at exactly 3 o'clock, a tall girl with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail entered, eyes that were exact mirrors of Graciella's, and an expression of determined nervousness. Their eyes met across the cafe, and the world narrowed to just the two of them. Isabella walked slowly toward the table. Graciella stood up, not knowing whether to offer a hug or maintain distance. Isabella made the decision for her, extending her hand. "It's good to finally meet you," she said. They sat. There was an awkward silence until they both spoke at the same time. "You look like... you have the same eyes." They laughed nervously, and some of the ice broke. For the next 3 hours they talked. Graciella told her about the day she was born, how she held her for 3 hours before the nurses took her away, how every detail of those 3 hours was engraved in her memory with perfect clarity. Isabella shared about her childhood, about her adoptive parents whom she clearly loved deeply, about the moment at 12 when she started asking questions about her origins. "My parents were always honest about the adoption," Isabella explained. "They said my biological mother loved me so much that she wanted to give me a better life. For a long time I didn't understand. I thought, if she loved me, why did she let me go?" She paused. "But now, seeing you, hearing you, I think I'm beginning to understand." "Were they good to you?" Graciella asked, needing to know. "Were you happy?" "Yes," Isabella smiled. "I had a wonderful childhood. My parents are amazing. I have a younger brother, Lucas, who's annoying, but I love him. I went to good schools, had opportunities, everything I probably wouldn't have had if I had kept you," Graciella finished. I'm not saying that to make you feel bad, Isabella hurried to say. I want you to know that your decision, even though it cost you so much, gave me a good life. Graciela had to wipe away tears. They talked about lighter things, Isabella showing photos of her parents, of her brother, of her dog named Beethoven. Graciela shared about Miguel, about how caring for him had been both healing and pain. Can I meet him someday? Isabella asked. The baby you care for. I'd love that. When it was time to part, they stood on the sidewalk outside the cafe. This time Isabella initiated the hug. It was tentative, still awkward, but real. Thank you for finding me, Graciela whispered, for giving me the chance to explain. Thank you for being honest, Isabella responded, for not pretending it was easy or that it didn't matter. I needed to hear that. They agreed to see each other again in 2 weeks. Nothing was resolved. There were 15 years of absence between them, but it was a beginning. The meeting with Isabella changed something fundamental in Graciela. After years of carrying guilt as a constant weight, she had finally begun to process it, to understand that she had done the best she could under impossible circumstances. But it also raised new questions about her future. One evening, after putting Miguel to bed, she found Roberto and Carolina sitting together in the study. The scene stopped her. They seemed to be having a serious conversation. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. No, come in, said Roberto. We actually need to talk to you. Graciela felt a knot in her stomach. Had she done something wrong? Carolina spoke first. I've been thinking a lot lately, about my role here, about what Miguel needs, about what I need. She paused. I've decided to go back to work. I accepted a position at an art gallery in São Paulo. It's something I always wanted to do before I felt I had to be only a wife and mother. That's wonderful, said Graciela, surprised. But what about Miguel? I'll be here on weekends, Carolina explained, and some days during the week when I can. But Roberto and I have talked, and we want you to stay, not just as an employee, but as... She searched for the right words. As part of the family, as someone Miguel needs in his life. Roberto continued, we want to offer you a permanent position, with a formal contract, full benefits, and a salary that reflects how much we value what you do. Also, he looked at his wife, who nodded. We've decided to officially separate. It wasn't an easy decision, but it's the honest one. Graciela sat down slowly. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stay, said Carolina. Say you'll keep caring for Miguel, teaching him, loving him the way you know how, because honestly, Graciela, you're more of a mother to him than I've been. And instead of resenting that, I'm finally accepting it. Miguel needs different kinds of love in his life, mine when I'm here, and yours always. It was an extraordinary admission, and Graciela saw the cost it had taken Carolina to say those words. But my daughter, Isabella, you'll have time for her too, Roberto assured. We'll adjust your schedule. We'll give you the flexibility you need to build that relationship. This doesn't have to be all or nothing. Graciela thought about Miguel, asleep in his crib upstairs. She thought about Isabella, with whom she had just begun to reconnect. She thought about her life before entering this house 6 months ago, cleaning in silence, invisible, just surviving. Yes, she said finally, I'll stay. But with one condition. What? Asked Roberto. I want to study formally. Take courses in early childhood education. Get the appropriate certifications. Not because I don't trust what I already know, but because I want to be the best version of myself for Miguel. Done, Roberto said immediately. We'll pay for your studies, whatever you need. Carolina stood and hugged Graciela, a gesture that months ago would have been unthinkable. Thank you for not giving up on us, she whispered, for being patient when I was horrible, for loving him when I didn't know how. That night, Graciela sat in her small room on the 3rd floor, writing in her journal for the first time in years. She wrote about Miguel, about Isabella, about how her life had transformed in ways she never could have imagined. For the first time in 15 years, she wrote, I feel like I'm finally making peace with my past, not because I've changed what I did, but because I finally understand why I did it, and I'm learning slowly to forgive myself. The following months brought changes that redefined everyone's lives. Carolina moved to São Paulo, visiting every 2 weeks. Her visits were more relaxed now, without the constant tension of failed duty. She played with Miguel when she was there, but didn't pretend to be something she wasn't. She was his mother, but on her own terms. Roberto began a process of personal transformation. With Carolina away and Graciela handling Miguel with quiet competence, he finally had space to reflect on what kind of father he wanted to be. He started coming home early 3 times a week, spending those evenings on the floor with Miguel, learning to change diapers without help, preparing purees that sometimes came out perfect and sometimes were disasters that made them laugh. Beatriz became a regular visitor, bringing gifts for Miguel, but more importantly, offering genuine friendship to Graciela. She helped her enroll in evening courses in early childhood education at a respected university. "My brother can pay the tuition, but you have to do the work," Beatriz said with a smile, "and I know you'll do it brilliantly." Isabella began visiting too, cautiously at first, then more frequently. They sat in the garden while Miguel played, talking about everything and nothing. Graciela learned about her daughter's interests: classic literature, impressionist paintings, experimental cooking. Isabella learned about Graciela's life, about the struggles and triumphs that had shaped this woman who had given her life. One day, Isabella brought her adoptive parents. It was a moment Graciela had dreaded, but Paulo and Mariana Silva were warm people who understood the complexities of the situation. "Thank you," Mariana simply told her, "for giving us the opportunity to be parents, for trusting strangers with the most precious thing you had." And Paulo added, "We never tried to replace you in Isabella's heart. We always knew there was room for all of us in her life." Seeing Isabella interact with her adoptive parents, seeing the genuine love between them, finally convinced Graciela that she had made the right decision 15 years ago. It wasn't easy, but it was love. Love enough to let her go. Miguel turned one with a celebration that united both of Graciela's worlds. There were her friends from the favela, neighbors who had known her struggle and celebrated her success. There was Roberto's family, Beatriz and her children, cousins who had come to accept Graciela as part of the clan. There was Carolina, who flew in from São Paulo to be there. And there was Isabella with her parents, witnessing the baby her biological mother loved with the same fierceness with which she had loved her. Miguel, blissfully ignorant of all the adult complexities, simply enjoyed destroying his cake with both hands, laughing while everyone sang. Roberto approached Graciela as they watched Miguel play with the other children. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For everything. For saving my son when he needed it most. For teaching me how to be a father. For staying when it would have been easier to leave." Graciela smiled. "He saved me too, you know. Caring for Miguel. Gave me the opportunity to be the mother I couldn't be for Isabella, and somehow that prepared me to reconnect with her now. How's that going with Isabella?" Slowly, but well. Graciela looked at her daughter, who was helping the younger children play. "We'll never be mother and daughter in the traditional sense. We lost those years. But we're building something new, something ours." "I'm glad," said Roberto, and there was a warmth in his voice that made her look at him. Lately, she had been noticing things about Roberto that she had deliberately ignored before. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the care with which he listened when she spoke, how he stayed up waiting for her when she had evening classes just to make sure she got home safely. It wasn't appropriate, she constantly reminded herself. He was her employer. She was still technically staff. But there was something growing between them that was hard to ignore, something that Beatriz had noticed and commented on with a knowing smile. But it wasn't the time. Maybe it would never be the time. And Graciela was at peace with that, because for the first time in her life, she was enough, just as she was. She didn't need a man to validate her, didn't need a fairy tale ending. She had Miguel, she had Isabella, she had a purpose and a future. That was more than she had ever dared to dream. But life, as always, had other plans. One afternoon, 3 months after Miguel's first birthday, Roberto called her to his study. His expression was serious, and Graciela felt a flash of concern. "Is something wrong with Miguel?" "No, Miguel is perfect. This is about us." He gestured to the space between them. About this situation, Graciela sat down slowly. Graciela, you're incredible with Miguel. You're patient, loving, dedicated. You've transformed his life, my life. He breathed deeply. But I can't keep pretending this is just an employer-employee relationship. Her heart started beating faster. Mr. Roberto, just Roberto, please. He leaned forward. These past weeks, watching you build a relationship with Isabella, how you've handled every challenge with grace, how you love Miguel without expecting anything in return, I realized I've fallen in love with you. The world stopped. You can't. That's not. I know it's complicated. You're an employee. There are class differences, expectations, all kinds of reasons why this is a terrible idea. He paused. But I also know that when you're in a room, I breathe easier. I know that your opinion matters more to me than any business partner's. I know that the idea of you someday meeting someone and leaving us terrifies me in ways I can't explain. Graciela felt hot tears on her cheeks. What are you saying exactly? I'm saying I want this to be real, not just employer and employee. I want to try to be a family. You, me, and Miguel, if that's what you want. If you can see me not as your boss, but as something more. Graciela stood up, walking to the window. Everything in her wanted to say yes, but there was too much at stake. Roberto, caring for Miguel is the most important thing in my life. If we try this and it doesn't work, then you'd stay anyway, he said immediately. You'd have a contract that guarantees your position regardless of what happens between us. Miguel needs you. That will never change. And Carolina? Carolina is genuinely happy in São Paulo. We've finalized the divorce amicably. She supports this. In fact, I think she saw it before I did. Graciela turned to look at him. And your family? Your social circle? A millionaire businessman with the former cleaning lady. You know what they'll say. That I found someone extraordinary who loves my son and makes me want to be a better man. He stood up, approaching. Graciela, I spent my life chasing approval from people whose opinions don't matter. Not anymore. The only thing that matters is Miguel and, if you'll let me, you. I have a daughter, she said. Isabella is part of my life now. She comes with complications, with adoptive parents involved, I know. And I want to get to know her better. I want to support you while you build that relationship. He gently took her hand. I'm not asking for answers now. I'm just asking you to think about it, to consider if you can see me not as Mr. Roberto, but simply as Roberto. An imperfect man who admires you more than words can express. Graciela looked at their joined hands, thinking about the path that had brought her here. From a 19-year-old pregnant and desperate girl to a 34-year-old woman who had survived 15 years of guilt and struggle, to this moment where love was freely offered. I need time, she said finally. Take all the time you need. That night, Graciela called Isabella. She told her everything, Roberto's confession, her own confusion, fears about complicating things. Do you love him? Isabella asked directly. I think so, but I'm afraid. Of what? Of losing everything again. Of trying and it failing. Of losing not just him, but Miguel too. Of deserving to be happy and that terrifying you, Isabella interrupted gently. Graciela, you've spent 15 years punishing yourself. Maybe it's time to allow yourself something good. But what if? What if it works? Isabella countered. What if this is the universe finally giving you what you deserve? You can't live your life in fear of losing. Sometimes you have to risk for the possibility of winning. They were wise words from a 15-year-old girl, and Graciela laughed through the tears. When did you become so wise? Good parents, Isabella responded with an audible smile in her voice. And a biological mother who taught me that love sometimes means making difficult decisions. True love isn't finding someone perfect. It's seeing someone imperfect perfectly. 2 weeks later, Graciela had her answer. She organized a dinner, her cooking of course, and invited Roberto, Beatrice, Carolina, who flew in specially, Isabella and her parents. It was a strange group, a family built not by blood but by choice and circumstance, but it was hers. After dinner, While Miguel played on the floor surrounded by adults who adored him, Graciela stood up. "I want to say something." Her voice trembled slightly. 8 months ago, I entered this house as a cleaning lady. Invisible, unimportant, just another person doing a job, but you— She looked around the table. "All of you saw me, gave me opportunities I never thought I'd have." She looked at Carolina. "You taught me that mothers don't have to be perfect. They just have to try every day to do their best." At Beatrice, "You showed me that first impressions don't define who we are, that people can change, grow, become unexpected allies." At Isabella and her parents, "You gave me forgiveness I didn't know I needed. You showed me that love comes in many forms, and that families can be complicated and beautiful at the same time." Finally, she looked at Roberto. "And you? You saw me when I was invisible. You valued me when I didn't value myself. You taught me that I deserve love, respect, and a future that isn't defined by my past." She took a deep breath. "Roberto asked me to consider something more than a working relationship. And after much reflection, my answer is yes. If all of you can accept this, if you can see that this comes from a place of genuine love and not convenience, I'd like to try." Roberto stood immediately, eyes bright. "Are you sure?" "Scared, but sure." She smiled through the tears. "Someone very wise told me I can't live in fear of losing. That sometimes I need to risk for the possibility of winning." Isabella raised her juice glass. "To taking risks," she said, "and to the families we build, not the ones we're born into." Everyone toasted, and Miguel, sensing the celebration, clapped his little chubby hands, making everyone laugh. 6 months later. Graciela graduated from her early childhood education program with honors. Roberto, Miguel, Isabella, Carolina, Beatrice, everyone was there applauding when she received her diploma. She no longer lived in the small apartment in the favela. Roberto had insisted she move into the mansion permanently, in her own room on the 2nd floor. Close but not too close, respecting boundaries while building something new. Her relationship with Roberto developed slowly, with the patience of two people who had learned that the best things can't be rushed. They went out to dinner, when Miguel was with Carolina. They walked on the beach in the early evenings. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. Isabella had become a regular visitor, sometimes bringing Lucas, her younger brother. Graciela was learning to be something between friend and mother, a role with no defined name but deeply meaningful. Carolina had found self-love in São Paulo. She visited regularly, and her relationship with Miguel was healthier now that she wasn't forcing something that didn't come naturally. She was a mother in her own way, and that was enough. One rainy afternoon, Roberto found Graciela in Miguel's room, watching the 18-month-old boy sleep his nap. He stood behind her, gently wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured. "About how life works in strange ways," she responded, leaning against him. 2 years ago, I was alone, broken, barely surviving. Now I have this." She gestured around. "All this." "You don't have this through luck or charity," Roberto said firmly. "You have it because you're extraordinary, because you worked for it, because you loved when it was hard, because you never gave up." Graciela turned in his arms, looking at him. "I love you," she said, the words coming more easily each time. "It's terrifying, but true." "I love you too." He kissed her softly. "And someday, when you're ready, I'm going to ask you something that will make this permanent, but not today. Today I just want to enjoy this moment." Miguel moved in his crib, making a small sound before going back to sleep deeply. Graciela smiled, thinking about the crying baby she had found almost a year ago, and the happy child he had become. She thought about Isabella, who now video-called her every night before bed, sharing stories of her day. She thought about how she had feared that loving Miguel would mean betraying the daughter she had let go, but instead had discovered that the human heart had infinite capacity for love. "Graciela?" Roberto pulled her from her thoughts. "Yes? Thank you for staying, for giving us the chance, for believing you deserved this." She kissed him softly, savoring the moment, this perfect fragment of time where everything she had lost had been found in new ways. Because the truth was this: She had entered this house looking for work. She had found redemption. She had come to clean. She had ended up healing. She had arrived invisible. She was leaving seen, valued, loved. And as she held Roberto in Miguel's room, as she listened to the child's peaceful breathing who had saved her and whom she had saved, Graciela finally understood what it meant to be home. It wasn't a place. It was people. It was love. It was forgiveness. It was second chances transformed into new beginnings. It was this. Outside, the rain began to let up, and the first rays of sun broke through the clouds, filling the room with golden light. Miguel stretched in his sleep, smiling at whatever he was dreaming, and Graciela, finally, completely, allowed happiness to fill her without guilt, without fear, without reservations. Because she deserved it. They all deserved it, and this time no one would take it